Well, I can't say these pictures are really bringing things up, really. You want to just talk about my life and from the beginning and where my parents came from and yeah.
Sounds good.
And our family.
Yeah.
Where our family came from. Yeah. Well, believe it or not, both sides of the family came from Missouri. Grandma Young, they came from McDonald County, Missouri, and came out here in, it would be 1904, and landed in Haines. Don't ask me why they landed in Haines. I have no idea. And they stayed for a year, and then they went back. They came out on the train, and they went back, and they came out in a covered wagon. And it would be, what, 19, Dad was 3, so it would be 19, back up the truck, now wait a minute, yeah, it was 1904 when they came out, first time, and he was 2. They came back out again when he was 5, that was the way of it. So that would have been 1909 when they came back again, and they came by covered wagon, and they settled in Haines. The first thing that Grandpa built was a storm cellar. They were used to having tornadoes and hurricanes and storm cellar. He used the local granite, and he made it so deep in the ground, tunneled it out so far, big enough for their family to get into, that at the bottom of the cellar, in the summertime, milk would freeze. You'd have frost on your milk down there. So you could keep ice cream. Not that they ever had much of it. They were kind of a poor family, but... let's see, who was the baby when they came back out? Must have been Alice. Dad's sister that died when she was 9. Must have been a baby at that time. Dad was number 5 out of 10 children. And the youngest one was born in 1911. My dad in 1902. And the rest of the family, the rest of Granddad's family came out and settled in the Haines area. His dad and mother and his brothers and sisters. And I had cousins that I never did meet. That was on the Young side of the family. On the York side, which was my mother's side of the family, oh my goodness. Grandma Sturgill was my grandmother's mother. And she died in traveling out here at the birth of her 13th child. They were out on the plains, and there were Indians around, and there was fear that, Indians would dig the person up. So they kept going, and they got to the American crossing on the Snake River, and she was buried out on an island out in the Snake River. And they went ahead at Mount Hope and Baker and put up a marker for her, but she isn't there. They went back a few years later, and there'd been a flood, and the island was gone. So they didn't find her. They settled on lower North Powder. Now that doesn't make much sense, but that's where it dumps into the Snake River over there in the Eagle Valley. And the York family came out just ahead of them. Grandpa York, they had 12 children. Oh, by the way, both families, Sturgills and Yorks, came from Milan, Missouri.
Okay.
Now, McDonald County's in the north, on the northwest corner of Missouri, and Milan is on the southwest corner of Missouri. Let's see, Grandpa York, okay, my great-grandfather York was the father of 13 children too, but my grandfather York was the oldest child. And I don't know how the two met. In the meantime, Grandpa York and Ed Cranston, who was a guy who had little money, went mining together at Cornucopia. Now that's a great sounding name. It's in the Elkhorn Mountains. It's close to North Powder River, at the lower end of North Powder River and close to the Snake. But they got a lot of gold out of there. And then, I don't know, they sold their shares in it or something, and they went to Sumter, Oregon, which is at the other corner of Baker County. By the way, Cornucopia, at the time that they lived over in that area, it was part of Union County. This is real history. And due to the fact that they couldn't get to the county seat, which was Union, in the winter, they finally decided to make it Baker County. So it's now all part of Baker County. And Sumter is on the edge of Baker County too. It's up in the mountains, it's up in the blues. And they mined up in there for a while. Mom's oldest brother, George, was born at Cornucopia at the mines. And they lived in a tent. That must have been interesting. It was winter time. That sounds even more interesting. I'm glad it was Grandma instead of me. But I don't know how Grandma and Grandpa York met each other. Grandma's name was Effie Lee Sturgill, and Grandpa's name was James Thomas York. And they did go to business college together in Baker. Brain dead for a second. Time out for age. Yeah, so anyway, then they moved to Baker, and they lived there at what is now Baldock Slough. It's close to I-84, and it's out close to the Baker Airport. And my mother was born by the time that they lived there. And they had their ranch out there halfway between Haines and North Powder. There's 8 miles between Haines and North Powder. And they had a ranch out there. Grandpa, because of the gold mining, had quite a bit of money by that time. And he had, what was it? It was almost 1,000 acres of property. And he had cattle and he had sheep. And I've got pictures of the home place. And Grandpa was hurt, and he got blood poison. He got a nail in his hand, and he got blood poison. And at that time, they didn't know what to do about it. This was 1929. And there was a sanatorium, which they called that those days. They were hospitals, at Radium Springs, which is a natural hot spring. There it's just a mile out of Haines. And he died there at the sanatorium. And they never did wash his hand. They bandaged it, but they never cleaned it. And he died of blood poison. So, yeah. That left Mother with no dad. She was 5 when he passed away. By the way, he passed away on my, well, wait a minute. I was born on the day that he passed away. Only, 4 years? No, it's more than 4 years. Grandpa didn't die in 1929. He died in 1912. Grandma died in 1929. But anyway, he passed away on the 24th of October, and in 1933, I was born on the 24th of October. Go figure. So, anyway, we kind of shared the day. Yeah, Grandma passed away of cancer. Yeah, the day before what was it, Black Monday, when the banks closed. It's interesting that my mother, when they did the assessing of his heirs and the assessing of Grandpa's heirs and of his possessions, that my mother at age 5 was baby girl York. Yet they knew what her name was going to be because she was named after, well, all the women were named after the first name of the 2 women that were there that took care of the kids when Grandma had another baby. He hired 3 women each time, and 2 of them was family. And so Mother got Aunt Susie's name, first name, and Aunt Bonona's for her second name. So why she didn't know what her name was, I don't know, but anybody didn't. I forgot a little something that I learned years back, which really embarrassed me at first. My family, the Yorks and the Sturgills, owned slaves, and they came out in 1865 to Oregon because they had nothing left back there. They had plantations and nothing was left. So they came out, you might say, with nothing. I've got one cup in there that is so intricate. It has all this gingerbread on it. Imagine having your slaves wash that stuff. I'll show it to you after a bit. It's in there in the cupboard. Why I haven't got a saucer to go with it, I don't know, but I don't. All I got's the cup. So anyway, it's a keepsake. Gosh, Mom was raised in North Powder, well, halfway between Haines and North Powder at the ranch. And then she got married at 17 to Donald Womack. And the marriage rotted, which I understand why. And they parted company. He was going to hit her, and she picked up a little short stick and threatened him with it. And he sued for divorce on the grounds of cruel and inhuman punishment, and she never even touched him, she said. So anyway, then Mom and Dad met, and they had Clayton, and they got married. You know, that's funny, but I never did know the exact date of their wedding. It was in June. It was 1931, but that's as far as I can go. That was kind of a private time between the 2 of them, and they never did share it with us. They didn't make it to 50 years, which I wish they had, but anyway. Dad passed away in 82, January of 82, so they didn't make it to 50 years. But, anyway. Gosh, I came on the scene right when things were really sticky. It was back during the Depression. And, yeah. Mom told some good stories about that one, I'll tell you. They lived in the square house when I was born, and that sounds funny. It was built on the square plan. It was exactly square. And it was over, well, what later they bought that same property, and they tore the square house down and became the orchard next to the house. And I know you were never there to see the orchard, but they had a lot of different trees in there. They even had a couple of apricots in there, which actually got ripe over there, which is unusual in that climate. Lots of apples and some cherries, and a pie cherry that due to over there, it would actually, they would get cherries on it. Mm-hmm. Here, it freezes at the wrong time. It has 5 different, it's a Montmorency, it has 5 different kinds of cherries on it, and it blooms at different times. But here, it manages to freeze every time. It never fails. I had a Montmorency and it didn't do anything. So, Oh, well, you know, I like cherries. That's one of my favorite fruits. So, anyway, yeah, I grew up in Haines most of the time. We weren't there all the time. We moved to Molalla during the Second World War. My father should have been too old for the draft, but because the war effort went on so long, they were making anybody that was under 45 register for the draft. And if you were 45 or under, you had to be into a defense job. And farming was defense, railroad work was defense, and logging was defense. Now, I don't know why the logging, but they could have gone into the shipyards or whatever. Dad was a stonemason by trade. He started as a stonemason. See, I'm skipping. He started as a stonemason back when he was 14. He was headed for school, and his clothing had holes in uncomfortable places. And Grandma had no material at all to patch the holes with. And he had shoes with no shoestrings and flapping, well, talking soles, and he went right on past the school and went over to the rock quarry and hit him up for a job. They took him on as an apprentice at 14. And so that became his trade. He was good at it. They made tombstones there. He learned to etch them and polish them and got it out. My school teacher in the 8th grade informed us this was all in a big hole. This granite was in a huge hole, and it was deep. They had to climb down in there with a ladder. And then they would drill holes in the stone and put blasting powder in there and break the stones where they wanted it to. And if you didn't know what you were doing, you could end up with pieces that you didn't want. But anyway, my school teacher in the 8th grade took us on a tour of the quarry. And somebody said, where did all this stone come from? She said, oh, they brought it in here and trucks and dumped it in here. Oh my goodness. Is that outside light on, honey? She'll break her neck out there. It's over there behind the lamp on that. Yeah, it's a far one. Yeah. So anyway, okay, where was I? Yeah, I grew up in Haines, went to school there most of the time. I started in my 1st grade at Christmas time, I got sick with diphtheria. I actually got sick on Christmas. And I don't know when I came out of it. I know that I could remember Dad coming in and sitting on my bed and reading the funnies to me. And I really enjoyed that. I couldn't talk to him. I could hear him. I couldn't talk to him. But definitely I did enjoy the funny papers. And I don't remember feeling like laughing or anything. It just seemed good. So it was like, you know, like he was holding me or whatever, just knowing that he cared. And I went back to school before the year was out, and I was bald-headed. I'd lost all my hair because of the fever that I had. And Mother crocheted me some cute little caps for my head. Okay. Well, I went to school on a Monday, and evidently the teacher had talked to the kids on Friday about when you come into the classroom, you take off your hats and your coats and hang them up. So, okay, I'm sitting there with this crocheted cap on my head, so nobody knows I'm bald. And one of the girls said, "You're supposed to take that off." I said, "No." "And you're supposed to take that off." "No." She reached up there and she grabbed it off my head, and then, she's bald. I wanted to fall through the floor in 1st grade. I was mortified. So, anyway, we got past that one. I don't know whether the teacher let me keep my crocheted caps on or if she made me hang them up. I don't know. but I know that I was out of first grade before I got hair. It was summertime before I got hair back. And Mom, I was crying about being bald, and Mom took me to Baker to see this lady that worked at J.C. Penney's, and she had pneumonia, and she lost her hair. But it came back like baby hair, fuzzy, and Mom took me in to see her, and I looked at that and started crying, and I didn't shut up until after we got home, she said. And what in the world is the matter with you? Her hair's just baby fuzz. Baby fuzz. But anyway, I got real hair. I got a lot more hair than I had before, and it's a little different color. It was redder when I was a child. And then after the diphtheria came in, mousy. Thank goodness most of the mouse is about gone. But anyway, then we moved to Molalla in my second grade. Dad went down right after Christmas time on the Greyhound bus. And then Mom hired, I don't remember his name, but somebody to haul our household goods down there. And we rented a house from this couple. They rented, I shouldn't say the house, we rented an upstairs apartment, which was 2-bedroom upstairs. And we stayed there until the end of the school year, and there was talk about us staying longer. We went back to Baker with Uncle Charlie and Aunt Liddy on Memorial Day. And our lawn at the house was taller than I was. We could hide in it. Dad got upset because we were walking through it. But anyway, and Mom's peonies, the flowers were way above the grass. The plants were way down there, and the flowers were way up here. Long stems, and they don't normally do that. And that's about all I remember about that. But then we ended up, I didn't know I could see through there. The buses moved. And then we ended up moving back to Baker just before, or I should say Haynes, just before school started in August. Now, just exactly when in August, I don't know. But we got there before school started, so that I started my third grade in Haynes. Finished the rest of my grade school there, got a diploma. Yes, yes. That's something people don't usually get from 8th grade. I've still got my diploma. And my mother always wanted me to be a nurse. And so she had me decided that I was going to take these classes, that I needed to be a nurse. And so in my freshman year, I signed up for Latin and made sure I got all the science I could. Yes, yes. But my mother and the teacher ganged up on me and decided the best time for me to have Latin was first period. I am not a morning person. For the first 2 periods every day, I needed easy classes that I could slide through. Ones that weren't hard, like English or math. I had to have Latin. Well, Latin didn't stick very good. I didn't do very good in that class. I ended up passing all right, and I got into second year Latin and had the same teacher. And finally, I talked her into letting me go to 4th period Latin. So that was after lunch. Worked out great. I got A's all that year. And at first, she acted like she thought somebody else was doing my homework. But I still did okay on the tests when we were doing written tests that we weren't even knowing we were getting. So, okay, it had to be me doing it. But I did graduate from Baker High, but I'm leaving out a little something that I'm wondering if I should put in for other kids behind me here. In my freshman year, on my birthday, my brother Clayton and the other friends that we had, one of them was out of school and had a car, and they were going to go to Hubbell Park and party. It was my birthday. Okay, Clayton's going. I'm going to go too. After all, it's my birthday, and I went. Clayton wrote his own excuse and signed my dad's name to it. My dad never signed an excuse in his life for school, but he wrote his own. He wouldn't write one for me. So I was the longest time before I could talk my friend Ann Rockney, Newt Rockney's niece, into writing an excuse for me. Her writing looked a lot like Mama's, and she wrote it for me. And then it would come to bad times along, and I didn't like what I was going to have a test in or whatever, and I'd skip school. And then again, I had the problem of how to get back in. So I attended 54 days in my freshman year. Needless to say, I had problems finishing those and getting a passing grade. So I had a few things to make up. So instead of graduating in 1951, when I should have, with my class, I graduated in 52. Because I ended up a half a credit short.
Oh, no.
After all that, we had to have a certain number of credits, and I was only half a credit short. But I took a full year anyway. And got my credits and got kind of a post-graduation course out of it. And yeah, I worked at the hospital during that time. I had decided long ago I didn't want to do that. I really wanted to go into research, but my teachers encouraged me and said no, that a woman could not get into research. And that it just wasn't something I could do. So I worked at the hospital, but then when Keith came back from overseas, we got married in September, the 29th of September of 52, and I didn't pursue anything, because I ended up pregnant not too long after I moved to Seattle with him. Anyway, thus began our family. Yes, I met Keith in my sophomore year at a dance. That was at what then was the gymnasium for our grade school. We had dances there every Saturday night, or most every Saturday night. But the time I went and that I met him was New Year's Eve. And we hit it off right from the top. And I danced 3 o'clock in the morning and home sweet home with him. And I got into the restroom where our coats were. And my best friend, Ella Enid Points, got on my case. What are you doing? You don't dance that dance with anybody unless you're married to him or engaged to him. You know better. Shame on you. All this good stuff. And she was really surprised when we did end up getting married. But in the meantime, he served overseas, and he was in the Army. He signed up as a paratrooper, but he ended up not going to Korea as a paratrooper. He was just in the regular Army at that point. And he worked in communications and was in the motor pool, taking things to the front lines and carrying the dead to the rear. During his training, he kind of cheated. He intentionally missed the target. They didn't think he could shoot straight. He didn't want to be a sharpshooter. He didn't want to be out there killing people. Mm-hmm. So that's how that came about. But anyway. Yeah, and you kind of know it from there. He was stationed at Fort Lawton, Washington, which is on the edge of Seattle. And we lived in Seattle from, I moved up there the 7th of December. And we moved to We moved back to Oregon in February of 54. Richard was born in